Hello, BookTube. I've got a little mail for you today, a couple of packages, and a periodical that is stuffed with good material. But of course, I concentrated on the bad, the irritating material. This is the London Review of Books from, I think, a week ago. The 1st of December. This is their 1st of December issue. And it's got a lot of stuff in here that I will be reading and rereading, a lot of stuff that I will be annotating and clipping out. Some of the stuff that's in here, I will be annotating and clipping out even though I don't have a book to put them in. There are quite a few books in here that sound really good. They will almost certainly get U.S. publications, but they haven't had them yet. I have a small pile of clipped reviews, clipped, folded, and dated reviews that I keep in case a book shows up. If I'm pretty sure that it's going to get a U.S. edition, then I hold on to those reviews so I'll have a place to put them. There's quite a bit of that in this issue. But the thing that drew my attention, I originally went in happy. I thought, ooh, that sounds really good. It's a piece by the novelist Tessa Hadley. That should have been my first warning. But the piece is called Lesser Beauties Drowned. And it purports to be a look at The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tey, which has just been reissued in the UK by Penguin. I haven't gotten those editions or even seen what they look like. I guess they have Douglas McCall Smith does, Alexander McCall Smith does the introductions for these. Any of you who live in the UK who've seen them, I'm pretty envious. I'd kind of like to know what else is in that series and whether or not they're ever going to come to America. I'm assuming that they will, that Penguin will bring them out, a version in a US Penguin sometime soon. This piece just says The Daughter of Time, Josephine Tey. Penguin. It's allegedly just a revisiting of The Daughter of Time, which is one of the best-selling and most reprinted mystery novels of all time. I've dealt with it on this channel. I've done read-along with Matthew at Maybury Book Club. I've talked about it many times. It is the story of a police inspector named Alan Grant who has broken his leg in a recent crime-foiling escapade and is in the hospital with his leg in traction. When someone's brought pictures to his room to sort of liven up the surroundings, and one of those pictures is of Richard III. And Grant starts to look at it and play it against what he remembers about learning about Richard III when he was in grade school, that this was a hunchback villain from Shakespeare. But the more he looks at the picture, the more he thinks he looks more like a judge. But he doesn't look like an evil person at all. And he decides, at first as a lark, to just read up on Richard III and whether or not he actually was responsible for the death of the princes in the tower. Now, I will link, if I remember, to a video of mine that I did on The Daughter of Time, in which I opened by laying out the full crimes of Richard of York. Well, it wasn't just the princes in the tower. He was guilty of killing several people. He spent his whole life killing people until finally he himself was hacked to pieces. If I remember, I'll leave a link to that video. I can't state the case any better than I do in that video. In Josephine Tey's novel, Grant eventually comes to the conclusion that Richard got a raw deal and that he didn't kill anybody. Just the opposite, that butter wouldn't have melted in his mouth, and that everything negative that you read about him is Tudor propaganda from the next administration. And the whole thing takes place in the hospital room. He doesn't get healed and find, a secret society of Ricardians that he has to foil with gun in hand. It's a completely static murder mystery, and yet it is completely captivating. No matter how many times you reread it, it's completely captivating. And that's kind of what I thought I would get in this Tessa Hadley article. I thought she would come to roughly that conclusion. It is almost universally accepted in the reading world that The Daughter of Time is a tremendously successful book, not just in terms of its sales, but in terms of its execution. But no, no, that's not, no, I reckon without the 21st century, which certainly doesn't make Josephine Tey immune. She was a woman, yes, but she had so much else going against her, oh my. And in the Progressive Olympics checkbox for Twitter, she has more going against her than for her. And that's to say nothing of her main character, Alan Grant. And sure enough, I want to read you just a bit of this. Richard III has attracted passionate defenders ever since Horace Walpole took up the cause in the 18th century. It appealed to the stubborn contrarian in Tey and to her skepticism of experts. A man who is interested in what makes people tick doesn't write history, Grant and his researcher agree in The Daughter of Time. Inspector Grant is the embodiment of the author's preferences. He's pragmatic, bluntly spoken, anti-intellectual, yet socially sophisticated, capable of sniffing out pretension, impervious to the glamour of artists, writers, theater people, yet still gets invited to their parties. Apart from the faulty syntax there, 21st century authors do not know English. So if they try elaborate syntax, it's going to fail, and it does in that sense, right? It falls apart at the very end when the part of speech that ends that whole sequence is not the same part of speech as the three that preceded. But in addition to that, if you've read The Daughter of Time, you know that none of this is true. We don't have any idea what Alan Grant thinks of the sophistications of theater folk. The theater folk in the book is an old friend of his. That's why he's not impressed by her. Not deferential to her. But anyway, in the novel To Love and Be Wise, it's made clear that, quote, literary sherry parties, even distinguished ones, were not Grant's cup of tea. With a policeman's ingrained habit of inspection, he let his eye run over the crowd, but found nothing of interest. There are ellipses in that quote in a couple of different places, and that's because it's a fraudulent quote. At that moment in To Love and Be Wise, he is looking through that sherry literary crowd for a suspect. That's why he finds nothing of interest. Not because he thinks the whole thing is just too court, not interesting. And those are the parts that the ellipses leave out. Because it's a false quote. This is someone building a straw man. And making me defend Richard III, almost. I'm not defending Richard III, but I'm defending a book that praises him, which is pretty painful. Let's see here. When I try, this is Tessa Hadley speaking in her own name. Tessa Hadley saying, when I try to remember what attracted me to The Daughter of Time when I was 15, I think it was probably this. Grant's self-possession, his irony, his savoir-faire, and the hints of romantic sensibility under the bluff surface. He was so rugged, so masculine, so right. And those are all forbidden in the 20th century. You cannot be any of those things. So you know where she's going. And she starts in the next paragraph. Predictably, all of that is less appealing now. Says who? Seymour? You? It's less appealing to you because you are on Twitter all day long and are now comfortable having been thoroughly radicalized into someone who thinks that all men are evil and that masculinity is toxic. If you've been thoroughly radicalized into believing that, then of course you're not going to like this novel anymore. Why would you bother? Why would you bother? And why would an editor at the London Review commission the piece? All she does for the rest of the piece, those of you who are curious, you can read it on your own. She sticks with The Daughter of Time for, I think, another 5 sentences, and then starts ranging over all of Josephine Tey's books, picking for politically incorrect, Twitter-censored stuff here and there, stuff that blue check marks on Twitter used to hate. Now the blue check marks on Twitter are all Nazis, so maybe they would. I don't know one way or another. I don't know either end of the spectrum, but I know that both ends are predictable. And she starts ranging over all of Tey's work, and then predictably taking shots at Tey herself. To put it mildly, the piece left a bad taste in my mouth that I think I can only fix in one way, and you will already see it coming, which is to reread The Daughter of Time. Nothing wrong with doing that. I've read it probably 100 times. But that was the periodical experience. It was a little bit off-putting, to put it mildly. I might not like the case that Josephine Tey makes in The Daughter of Time. It is completely false, self-evidently false. Richard never met another adult or child when his first thought wasn't, I wonder if I could kill them. That was what he thought about literally everyone in his life. He was a slavering, frothing at the mouth, barely controlled, psychopathic murder machine. Who is responsible for killing 4 kings. No one is ever going to come close to that kind of record. Anyway, I'm not defending Richard, but the book, The Daughter of Time, is immensely entertaining. It's been ranked, I know that a couple of mystery societies have ranked it as the best murder mystery ever written, even though it has no gunplay, no sleuthing, the detective never leaves his bed. I would almost agree with that. There are some candidates I would put up there for inclusion in that list, but I would certainly put it in the top 10, any top 10. I don't agree with the argument in the book, but having entitled zillennial contempt drizzled all over it by an nincompoop, I'm not in favor of that either. So let's just move on. We'll move on to books here. Let's just say, if you encounter this issue of the London Review of Books, or if you're wondering what the gist of my objection to that article is, I can give it to you in one sentence, which is that you should read The Daughter of Time. There you go. Simple as that. Ignore Tessa Hadley and read The Daughter of Time. But what have we got here? Oh my. Okay. 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 Great. This almost never happens. What we have here is a mistake on the part of a publicist. I know the publicist. We were going back and forth with each other, and this is just simply a mistake. Might not even be on their part. Might be a mistake on the part of an intern. It seldom happens. Even in these post-COVID days, it seldom happens. I am a big fan of book publicists. I think they're wonderful. Overworked. They are a vital glue that holds the whole of the mainstream publishing industry together, and they never get any credit for it. But this is a mistake. We are getting here KJ Parker's new book, very slim thing, Pulling the Wings of Angels. Very slim thing here. Doesn't have a date. This looks like a finished copy. So this might be a finished copy for an early 2023 release. And KJ Parker, of course, will be known to a lot of you. And you may be wondering, well, what's the mistake? Well, let me read you the pub sheet that came with this book. This is the true story of the White House plumbers, a secret unit inside Nixon's White House, and their ill-conceived plans to stop the leaking of the Pentagon Papers and how they led to Watergate and the president's demise. On July 17, 1971, Aigil Bud Crow was summoned to a closed-door meeting by his mentor and a low-key confidant of the president, John Ehrlichman. Expecting to discuss the most recent drug control program launched in Vietnam, Crow was as shocked when Ehrlichman handed him a file and a responsibility for the Special Investigations Unit, or SIU, later to be notoriously known as the Plumbers. The Plumbers' work, according to Nixon, was critical to national security. They were to investigate the leaks of top-secret government documents, including the Pentagon Papers, to the press. Driven by blind loyalty, diligence, and dedication, they set out to handle the job, eventually hiring G. Gordon Liddy and E. Howard Hunt, who would lead the break-in in the office of Dr. Fielding, a psychiatrist treating Daniel Ellsberg, the man they suspected was doing the leaking. I don't think this pub sheet matches up with Pulling the Wings of Angels. I'm pretty sure this was simply a mistake. So I don't know if I'm down the line going to get a copy of The Plumbers, the White House, A New History of the White House Plumbers, with the pub sheet for this book. But as long as I'm waving this at you, we might as well figure out what this is, right? Do we have any kind of a... This is a madcap adventure brimming with ethical quandaries and sardonic wit, delivered by World Fantasy Award-winning author KJ Parker. And the premise goes, long ago, a wealthy man stole an angel and hid her in a chapel, where she remains in prison to this day. That's the legend, anyway. A clerical student who's racked up gambling debts to a local gangster is given an ultimatum: deliver the angel his grandfather kidnapped or forfeit various body parts in payment. And so begins a whirlwind theological paradox with the student at the center, in which the stakes are the necessity of God, the existence of destiny, and the nature of angels. So radically different. Radically different. But they both sound really good. And then we'll do this next book, and now I'm wondering. It's a different publisher, totally different thing. This never happens, so I don't think we'll get another mistake. Let's see what this next one is. And then we'll finish up for today. Oh, okay, great. All right. This is a finished copy of something that we have seen before on this channel, but with one key difference. So this comes out in January. Yes? Yes, this is a January release. This is Why Read by Will Self, the novelist Will Self. This is a collection of his occasional writing, deadline writing, about authors, anniversaries, reviews, that sort of thing. I love these kinds of things. I have a whole bookcase dedicated to these books. Will Self, author of the BookTube shortlisted novel Umbrella, is among the most unusual and distinctive writers working today. And in this book is a collection of writings inspired by a life lived in and for literature. Passionately argued, piercingly intelligent, acutely observed, and shot through with his singularly droll sense of humor, Self holds forth on craft and criticism, writing and literature. He writes about the foibles of his typewriter repairman, which was a famous essay. I loved it. I had to deal with a lot of those issues myself before, not being a crackpot. I abandoned a manual typewriter in favor of the internet. The Irradiated Zone of Chernobyl, also a standout piece. Australian Outback, to the literary forms past and future. With his characteristic intellectual brio, Self aims his inimitable eye at titans of literature like Virginia Woolf, Kafka, Orwell, Conrad. He writes movingly on W.G. Sebald's childhood in Germany and provocatively describes the elevation of William S. Burroughs' Junkie from shocking pulp novel to beloved cult classic. That's great. I won't be reading this yet, but I love these kinds of books, these collections of reviews. I just think they're great. Naturally, I would, right? Since I'm a critic. So Will Self goes on to have a lucrative, noteworthy career as a novelist and TV commentator and all. I don't do any of that, but we both have generated tons and tons and tons of book reviews, and you like it when you can interest an author in collecting some of those so that they're in the newspapers where they originally appear, they're here today and gone tomorrow, or lost in the wilds of the internet. But a book is a book. The only difference in this book between this and the advance copy that we saw a month ago is a little switcheroo on the part of the author, on the part of the publisher, in terms of the book's design. Because somebody at the publisher realized that when you invert these two blocks, your book says, why read Will Self? And nobody wants to ask that question. You don't want your book asking, why read Will Self? So you, of course, have to switch these. You have to switch them. You have to have Will Self at the top and why read at the bottom, because otherwise you're asking a question that you might not like the answer to. I think it doesn't happen. That also doesn't happen very often, and it's kind of funny when it does. So those are our 2, or is it 3 books? we have Will Self, Why Read, and we have Pulling the Wings Off Angels. But we also have The White House Plumbers, a new history by, did I tell you the author of this thing? This is by the Crows. This is by the 2 of the people who are involved. And I guess it's soon to be a 5-part HBO miniseries starring Woody Harrelson and Justin Theroux. So we have 3 books. We have The White House Plumbers, Pulling the Wings Off Angels, and Will Self, Why Read? So, not bad at all for a mail haul. Plus, I was forced by a piece of journalism in the London Review of Books to defend The Daughter of Time. I can certainly defend The Daughter of Time. I can't defend Richard, but I can defend the book. If you haven't read it, ignore this condescending piece of crap article by Tessa Hadley and read the book. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. That's our mail for today, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.